Today, superhero movies are considered a staple of cinema. A new feature film featuring complex battles with huge explosions and heroes in tight spandex fighting space aliens are pumped out of Hollywood with frequency. Major studios believe that the franchise approach of these movies, mixed with reliable formulas and big spectacle moments, will be enough to secure their next blockbuster hit. However, superhero movies didn't always function under these assumptions. Since the beginning of the genre over 80 years ago, superhero movies have gone through numerous evolutions. Many of these changes have altered what the superhero genre entails, as well as the way the film industry as a whole goes about producing movies. Superhero films got their start in the 1940s as multi-chapter serials. Serials were short films with weekly theatrical releases, often approximately 20 minutes in length and ending in some kind of cliffhanger. The goal was to draw audiences back to the theater week after week to find out what happened next to their favorite characters. The first superhero to be adapted to film was Captain Marvel, aka teenage radio expert Billy Batson. Billy gains the power to transform into a super-powered individual by saying the word Shazam. Captain Marvel had developed after Radio Pictures' unsuccessful attempts to license Superman. The 12-part serial, released in theaters in 1941, and captivated audiences nonetheless. The serial became enormously successful and spurred Radio Pictures to produce several more superhero serials. Columbia soon jumped on the success of Republic's superhero serials with their 15-part Batman and Phantom serials, both released in 1943. Captain America and Superman soon found their way to screen shortly after in 1944 and 1950 respectively. These serials were popular in large part because they were based on comic books. Audiences were familiar with these characters and wanted to see what they would get up to on the big screen. This early era of superhero film established that there was a market for comic book adaptations. Soon, the tune-in next week formula of these series became outdated, and they gradually stopped being produced. Instead, there was a transition to superhero TV shows that could be watched on a screen at home. However, the industry soon turned to adopt another form of superhero storytelling, the full-length feature. Instead of weekly releases, studios started producing series of films featuring the audience's beloved comic book characters. A series of 5 Superman movies released between 1978 and 1987 starring Christopher Reeves as Superman reflects this new franchise approach. Studios discovered that with films like these, they could produce sequel after sequel with the same characters, drawing in audiences who wanted to see what their favorite heroes got up to after the close of their last adventure. It was not until the 2000s that the superhero genre started to dominate the American film industry. The technology available at this point in time was far more advanced than what was available in the 1940s, allowing superhero movies to be more fantastical than ever before. Huge special effects that would have been impossible 20 years prior began to be used to transform these films into bigger and bigger spectacles. In addition to box office earnings, these huge movies could produce merchandise at a faster rate than ever before. As long as the studio could make a franchise last, they could continue selling merchandise and toys associated with characters. Let's take, for example, The Avengers, a film released in 2012 that grossed a box office total of $1.52 billion on a budget of $220 million. This alone shattered multiple box office records, but the cash flow didn't stop there. Hasbro estimates that Marvel grossed an additional $150 million from toy sales associated with the movie. The Avengers was such a huge hit in the 2010s, in large part because of Marvel's unique approach to storytelling. The studio had woven together an intricately connected narrative in which each of the individual 23 films released by Marvel between 2008 and 2019 worked as an episode within a larger narrative. This was an experiment in long-form storytelling that, for the most part, had not been attempted previously within the feature film space. Timelines and plots had to be mapped out carefully so that everything could fit together perfectly. This was a practice common in comic books and television spaces of the era, but not typical in film. This approach proved to work out extraordinarily well financially. The 5 films released by Marvel prior to the Avengers each introduced characters with their own stories. In order to get the full context for Avengers 2012, the viewer had to first watch the previous 5 films the studio had produced. This brilliant strategy had viewers coming back time and time again to see where their favorite character storylines would go in the next film. However, Marvel was not the only one producing films in the superhero space. DC Comics had also been making superhero movies for some time. They soon introduced the DC Extended Universe, and instantaneously found themselves in direct competition with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While Marvel focused on stories that balance adventure and humor, DC took an approach that offered a darker, more gritty tone. This approach is exemplified in 2008's The Dark Knight. Marvel and DC continued to be in competition with each other throughout the 2020s. Today, superhero movies have firmly cemented their place in pop culture. The combination of an established audience and the franchise approach with sprawling narratives spanning multiple films have in many ways made them surefire box office successes. One example of a recent superhero success is 2025's Superman. While it did utilize many of the techniques already popular in the superhero genre, such as big fights and the franchise approach, this film also did something new. It changed what it meant to be a superhero, spreading the message that kindness and love is what makes you super, not how hard you can punch. The rise of superhero movies has shaped not only Hollywood, but today's film industry as a whole. In are the days of fast-paced, adventure-packed web-slingers and Men of Steel. Superhero movies helped usher in an age of franchise and showed the world that alternative media, like comic books, can be successful as feature films. Without the first superhero serials of the 1940s, the types of films being produced today would be drastically different.